Listen, I have been a security analyst for the Galactic Conservation Network for 73 cycles, and I thought I had seen everything. Every stupid decision, every reckless life form, every predator that made my scales turn pale. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, prepared me for the day a human walked into Sector 9 of the Velkaris Preserve. Let me paint you a picture. The Velkaris Preserve is not some pleasant garden where families take their hatchlings for educational outings. No. This is where we keep the worst of the worst. The creatures that made entire civilizations pack up their things and move to different star systems. We are talking about the Razorwing stalkers from Thu Prime, the Graviton serpents that can literally bend space around their prey, and the crown jewel of nightmares, the void mantas. These things hunt by detecting fear pheromones from 3 kilometers away. So when Kip, my monitoring partner, a 4-armed Brevlin with anxiety issues even before this incident, started making that high-pitched whistling sound that meant something had gone catastrophically wrong, I knew we had a problem. "Tell me someone did not breach the perimeter fence again," I said, not looking up from my console. Last month a group of Yalthian teenagers had dared each other to touch the barrier. One of them lost 2 tentacles. Kids these days, I swear. Worse, Kip wheezed, his primary breathing sac inflating and deflating too rapidly. Much worse. There is a human inside Sector 9. My coffee, if you could call the bitter Krellian bean extract coffee, went down the wrong pipe. I coughed, sputtered, and finally managed to croak out a response. A human. Female designation. Approximate age. 20 standard cycles. And Venn, he turned all 4 of his eyes toward me, which is how Brevlins show they are dead serious. She is just standing there. I pulled up the visual feed on my primary screen, and sure enough, there she was. A human girl wearing what I would later learn was called a hiking outfit. Boots, pants with too many pockets, a jacket, and a bag strapped to her back. Her hair, a strange reddish-brown color, was tied back from her face, and she was standing, completely motionless, right in the middle of Clearance Zone 7. You know what Clearance Zone 7 is also called? The killing floor, because nothing that enters it leaves alive. How did she even get in there? I demanded, already pulling up the barrier logs. The fences are rated for military-grade containment. The access codes require level 8 clearance. Kip pointed a trembling limb at another screen. She climbed over Section 14. The sensors flagged it as a maintenance drone. A maintenance drone? Here I stared at him. She is a biological life form. She has a heat signature. She breathes oxygen. How could the sensors possibly? The system categorized her as mechanical because her climbing pattern was too precise and efficient. The AI could not believe anything biological would scale a 15-meter fence without equipment. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to cry. Mostly, I wanted to find whoever programmed our security systems and have a very stern conversation about their assumption parameters. But there was no time for that because right then, a Razorwing stalker emerged from the tree line approximately 40 meters from the human girl. If you have never seen a Razorwing stalker, count yourself lucky. Imagine a predator built by a committee of sadists. 6 legs, each ending in serrated claws. A tail with 3 separate striking points, all coated in neurotoxin. Wings that fold against its body until it decides to pounce, at which point they spread out to create a terrifying silhouette that causes cardiac arrest in smaller species. And its hunting strategy. It circles its prey, gets closer with each pass and waits for the prey to run. The movement triggers its attack reflex. Standard protocol says we should not interfere with natural predator behavior in the preserve. But this was a human. An actual living, breathing Deathworlder who probably had family somewhere who would be very upset if she got eaten in our facility. Plus, the legal paperwork would be an absolute nightmare. "Deploy the sonic deterrents," I ordered. "Drive it back toward the northern sector." Kip worked his console, but nothing happened. He tried again. Still nothing. The deterrents are not responding. That sector had a power fluctuation this morning. Maintenance was supposed to fix it. Of course they were. Of course maintenance had not gotten around to it. Typical. On screen, the Razorwing stalker took another step closer to the human girl. It tilted its head, which is how they assess threat levels. She still had not moved. Not even a twitch. Most species would have been running, screaming, or at least showing some sign of having noticed the 300-kilogram murder machine stalking them. But this human girl, she just stood there, her eyes tracking the stalker as it began its circling pattern. "We need to get an emergency team in there now," I said, reaching for the alert system. Full tranquilizer protocol. Authorization code Venn, 7-4, Gamma. Emergency teams are 20 minutes out, Kip reported, his voice climbing into registers that hurt my audio receptors. The shift change just happened. Everyone is in the briefing bunker on the other side of the facility. 20 minutes. This girl had 20 minutes to survive in an enclosure with at least 4 different species of apex predator, and she was just standing there like she was waiting for public transportation. The Razorwing Stalker completed its first circle, 12 meters away now, all close enough that I could see its muscles bunching under its armored hide. It was preparing for the second pass, the one where it would cut the distance in half. "Why is she not moving?" Kip whispered. "Is she injured? In shock? Do humans freeze when frightened?" "I have no idea," I admitted. The human psychology briefings I attended said they have something called a fight or flight response. But apparently there is a third option nobody mentioned. Stand perfectly still and hope the problem goes away. Except that was not going to work with a Razorwing Stalker. These things hunted prey that evolved dozens of defensive strategies over millions of years. A human standing still was just a human that had not started running yet. The Stalker began its second circle.
It's 6 meters.
I could see the toxin glands pulsing on its tail tips.
It opened its mouth slightly, tasting the air.
Hunting was not just visual for these creatures. They used thermal sensors, vibration detection, and chemical analysis. This girl must have been lighting up like a festival display on every single one of those senses. "Come on, emergency team," I muttered, watching the response timer tick down. 18 minutes remaining. That was when the second predator showed up. A Graviton Serpent, sliding out from the rocks near the western boundary. Now, if the Razorwing Stalker was built by sadists, the Graviton Serpent was designed by theoretical physicists with a cruel sense of humor. 20 meters long, scales that bent light around them, and the ability to manipulate local gravity fields. They crushed prey by creating a gravity well and then swallowing whatever got pulled in. I have seen them eat creatures 3 times their size. "Oh no," Kip said. "Oh no, no, no. This is not happening." But it was happening. The serpent had detected either the stalker or the human or both, and it was moving in to investigate. These two species were not territorial with each other. They barely acknowledged each other's existence, but having both in the same zone meant the human was now in twice as much danger. The smart move, the logical move, would have been for the girl to run, pick a direction, any direction, and sprint for the nearest emergency shelter. We had them positioned every 100 meters specifically for situations like this. Sure, she would probably trigger the stalker's attack reflex, but at least she would have a chance. She did not run. She stood there, and I started to notice something odd. Her breathing, even from the camera angle I could see her chest rising and falling in a slow, steady rhythm. Not the rapid gasps of panic, not the frozen stillness of shock, just calm, measured breaths. "Pull up her bio readings," I said. "If she has any tech on her, I want to know what we are working with." Kip fiddled with the sensors. Got something. Basic communicator device in her pocket. Low grade, nothing military. I can access its sensors though. Her heart rate is... Wait, this cannot be right. What? 72 beats per minute. That is resting rate for humans. She is not stressed at all. I stared at the screen. The Razorwing Stalker was now at 3 meters. The Graviton Serpent was closing from the other direction. And this human girl had the heart rate of someone taking a casual walk. "Maybe the device is malfunctioning," I suggested, but I did not believe it. The Stalker stopped its circling.
Yay, this was it. Decision point.
In the next few seconds, it would either attack or deem the prey not worth the energy expenditure.
I had seen this exact behavior 1,000 times.
The way it lowered its body, the wings beginning to unfold, the tail coming up into striking position. The human girl shifted her weight, just slightly, from her left foot to her right foot. It was such a small movement that I almost missed it. But the Razorwing Stalker did not miss it. Its head snapped toward her with laser focus. There, that was the trigger. That was the movement that would make it pounce. Except it did not pounce. It tilted its head again, in that assessing way. And then I swear on my ancestors' scales, it took a step backward. "Did that just," Kip started to say, then could not finish the sentence. The Stalker took another step back. Its wings were still partially spread, but the attack posture was gone. Instead, it was displaying something I had only seen a handful of times in all my cycles working here: uncertainty. The Graviton Serpent reached the clearing and stopped. It raised the front third of its body, tasting the air with its forked sensors. The gravity field around it was visible as a shimmer in the air, like heat waves. It looked at the human, then it looked at the stalker, then back at the human. And then, in a move that would make me question everything I thought I knew about predator behavior, the serpent turned around and slithered back toward the rocks. "What is happening?" Kip asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I had no answer.
On screen, the Razorwing stalker was backing away, keeping its eyes on the human girl, but clearly deciding that whatever she was not prey. Within 30 seconds, it had retreated back into the tree line and disappeared.
The human girl remained motionless for another minute. Then, slowly, carefully, she reached into one of those many pockets on her pants. She pulled out a small device, looked at it, and started walking. Not running, not even hurrying. Just walking, calm as you please, toward the eastern boundary of Sector 9. "Where is she going?" Kip asked. "That direction leads to the Void Manta territory." He was right, and Void Mantas were exponentially more dangerous than anything she had just encountered. They hunted by detecting fear pheromones, and while this girl seemed remarkably calm, she was still human. She had to be producing some level of stress chemicals. "Track her path," I said, "and get me every camera angle we have. I need to understand what just happened." The girl walked for approximately 4 minutes. She paused occasionally, checking her device, which I now realized was some kind of navigation unit. Not a sophisticated one either, probably civilian-grade positioning technology. She passed within 10 meters of a thornback ravager den. Era's den, Tesura Sever Sever. In 9 for 2, those things were usually aggressive toward anything in their territory. They did not even look at her. Then she reached the mana pools. Now, void manas are not your standard aquatic predators. They are semi-phased, meaning they can shift between dimensional states. You think you are looking at a pool of calm water, and suddenly there is a 5-meter-wide predator materializing out of nowhere, wrapping around you, and dragging you into a pocket dimension, where it digests you slowly over several weeks. Very unpleasant, very deadly. We had lost 2 handlers to manas over the years, and both of them had been wearing full protective gear. The girl stopped at the edge of the largest pool. "La chum?" She looked down at the water. I held my breath, wondering if she even knew what she was looking at. The pools seemed completely harmless, just dark water surrounded by mineral deposits. Something rippled under the surface. A void manta, sensing prey, began to manifest. I could see the distortion in the water as it started to phase into this reality. The girl would not even see it coming until it was too late. But then she did something that made my scales stand on end. She spoke, out loud, to the pool. "Yeah, I can see you," she said, her voice carrying clearly over the audio feed. "Nice try, though. Very sneaky." The rippling stopped. The manta remained partially phased, caught between dimensions like it could not decide if it had been detected or not. The girl crouched down, still keeping a safe distance from the water's edge. "Look, I am just trying to get to the research station on the other side of this place. My shuttle crashed about 6 kilometers back. I figured cutting through here was faster than going around. You all seem like you have a nice setup, and I really do not want to disturb anyone's day. So if you could just, not eat me for the next hour, that would be fantastic." The void manta fully retreated, disappearing back into whatever dimensional pocket it called home. The pool returned to calm, dark water. The girl stood up, brushed off her knees, and kept walking. "She is talking to them," Kip said, his voice filled with disbelief. "She is talking to apex predators like they are fellow commuters. And they are listening," I added, watching the girl disappear into the canyon area that led toward the northern research buildings. "They are actually listening." The emergency response team finally arrived, weapons ready, tranquilizer loads prepared. I had to call them off before they accidentally shot the most interesting thing to happen in this facility in decades. "Stand down," I ordered. "Subject is mobile, and apparently in no danger. Establish a perimeter, but do not engage." "But sir, the protocols," one of the team leaders protested. "The protocols did not account for whatever this is," I said. "Just keep visual contact and make sure nothing follows her out." The girl made it to the northern fence in another 15 minutes. She found a service ladder, the kind we use for maintenance access, and climbed over as easily as she had climbed in. On the other side, she dropped to the ground, checked her navigation device one more time, and headed off toward the research complex in the distance. I pulled up the external cameras and watched her walk away. Just a small figure against the purple vegetation of Velkaris's wilderness, completely unaware that she had just done what no trained xenobiologist, no armed security team, and no protective technology had ever managed to do. She had walked through Sector 9 and survived by simply being, well, herself. "We need to file a report about this," Kip said, still staring at his console like it might suddenly make sense, "and probably update our security protocols, and maybe our entire understanding of predator-prey dynamics." "Yeah," I agreed. "We probably should. But first, I wanted to know who this human was, why she was here, and how, in the name of all that was logical, she had known exactly how to handle creatures that had evolved to be perfect killing machines. I pulled up her shuttle's registration codes. Emergency landing filed with the Colonial Authority 3 hours ago. Pilot and sole occupant, Lila Vance, civilian transport contractor. Age 22, homeworld Earth. Previous occupation, wildlife rehabilitation specialist. Wildlife rehabilitation. Of course. This was going to be a very interesting report to write. So here is the thing about filing incident reports with the Galactic Conservation Network. They have a form for everything. Unauthorized entry. Form 12B predator breach. Form 37C equipment malfunction. Form 82D. But nowhere, and I mean absolutely nowhere in the entire bureaucratic nightmare of our documentation system, is there a form for, quote, human casually strolled through maximum security predator zone and made friends with everything that should have eaten her, end quote. I spent 3 hours trying to write up what had happened before I gave up and just labeled it as a general incident inquiry. Puckett had already gone home, muttering something about needing to recalibrate his entire understanding of biology. I did not blame him. I was considering the same thing. But the universe, as I have learned over 73 cycles of working security, has a funny way of not letting you forget about weird situations. Because 2 days after Lila Vance walked through Sector 9, my supervisor, a Kralthian administrator named Bex, who had all the personality of a data storage unit, called me into her office. "Venn," she said, not looking up from her holographic displays, "explain to me why I have a request from the Xenobiological Research Council asking to interview a human who should not have been anywhere near our facility." I sat down in the chair that was definitely not designed for my species. "Did you read my report?" I read it 3 times. Then I had 2 colleagues read it. Then I sent it to the head veterinarian, who told me, and this is a direct quote, that what you described was biologically impossible, and I should consider mandatory rest cycles for my staff. "It happened exactly as I described it," I said. "We have full video documentation, multiple camera angles, bio readings from her personal device, sensor logs from every detector in Sector 9. She walked in, stood completely still for over 20 minutes, calmly observed multiple apex predators, talked to a void manta like she was asking for directions, and walked out without a scratch. The Pex finally looked at me. She had 6 eyes arranged in 2 rows, and when she focused all of them on you simultaneously, it felt like being examined under laboratory conditions. The Research Council wants to conduct a study. They want to understand how a human with no military training, no protective equipment, and no xenobiological education managed to survive an environment that requires Level 8 hazard certification even for observational visits. "And they want me to help with this study?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "You are the primary witness. You watched the entire event, you understand the predator behaviors better than most of the research staff, and according to your personnel file, you speak functional human standard English." She tilted her head. "Tell me, Venn." She tilted her head. "Tell me, Venn, in your professional opinion, was this human lucky, or did she know exactly what she was doing?" I thought about that for a moment, about the way Lila had shifted her weight so carefully, the measured breathing, the calm assessment of her surroundings, the fact that she had spoken directly to a void manta and it had listened. "She knew," I said. "Every movement was deliberate. She understood the predators better than we do, and we have been studying them for decades." Box made a humming sound that Kralthian made when they were processing unexpected information. "The research team wants to bring her back. Controlled environment, full safety protocols. They want to document her interactions with various species and analyze her techniques. Your job is to coordinate security and act as liaison. You will meet with Miss Vance this afternoon at the Colonial Administrative Center. Try not to let her escape into any more restricted areas. 3 hours later, I found myself sitting in a small meeting room that smelled like the recycled air and anxiety common to all government buildings across the galaxy. The door opened and Lila Vance walked in, looking significantly cleaner than the last time I had seen her, but wearing the same expression of casual confidence that had carried her through Sector 9. "Hi," she said, sitting down across from me, without waiting for an invitation. "You must be Venn. They told me you were the one who watched me on the cameras. Sorry about that, by the way. I did not mean to cause a panic. My shuttle's navigation system glitched, and I thought cutting through the preserve would save time. You do understand that the Velkar's preserve is a maximum security containment facility for the most dangerous predators in this sector," I said,
Hey.
trying to keep my tone professional. "There are warning signs in 47 languages. The fences are marked with hazard symbols. The entry protocols require multiple authorization checks." "Hole. I saw the signs," Lila said, pulling out a datapad and scrolling through something. "Hole. But my communicator was running out of power. I was about 8 hours behind schedule for my cargo delivery. Hole. And honestly, I grew up around dangerous animals. I figured it could not be that much worse than the time I had to retrieve a tracking collar from a grizzly bear territory back on Earth." "A grizzly bear," I repeated slowly. "You are comparing void mantas and razorwing stalkers to Earth fauna?" "Well, no. Obviously your predators here are way more specialized. The stalker hunts by movement, right? The serpent uses gravity manipulation. The mantas phase between dimensions. But the basic principle is the same." She looked up from her datapad. "Predators do not waste energy on prey that is not behaving like prey. If you understand their hunting triggers and avoid activating them, most predators will just decide you are not worth the effort." I stared at her. "You learned this from working with Earth animals?" "Wildlife rehabilitation," she said with a shrug. "Spent 5 years working with injured and orphaned predators. Bears, wolves, big cats, crocodiles. You learn pretty quickly that most dangerous animals are only dangerous if you do something stupid. Stay calm, respect their space, understand their body language, and 9 times out of 10, they will leave you alone. The 10th time is usually because you accidentally got between them and something they care about, like food or babies. But you had never encountered alien species before," I pointed out. "How did you know the same principles would apply?" "I did not know for sure," Lila admitted. "But evolution tends to favor efficiency. A predator that wastes energy attacking things that are not good prey does not survive long enough to pass on its genes. I figured apex predators anywhere in the galaxy probably followed similar rules. Assess the target, determine if it is prey, calculate energy cost versus benefit, decide whether to attack. So I just made sure I did not register as prey." She made it sound so simple, so logical, like walking through a zone that had a 15% survival rate for trained professionals was just basic problem solving. "The research team wants to study your methods," I said. "They want to document how you interact with different predator species, controlled environment, full safety measures. You would be compensated, of course." Lila leaned back in her chair, considering this. "Will I have to stand still for another 20 minutes? Because that was honestly the hardest part. My left leg kept wanting to cramp up." "You can negotiate the specifics with the research coordinator," I said. "But they are particularly interested in your interaction with the void manta. You spoke to it, and it responded." "Oh yeah, that was interesting." Lila pulled up something on her datapad and turned it toward me. It was an article about Earth predators. Before I left Earth, I read everything I could find about xenobiology. There was this one paper about how some void mantas showed rudimentary problem-solving abilities. They could recognize patterns and modify hunting strategies that suggested at least basic intelligence. So I figured, why not try communication? Worst case, it eats me. Best case, it understands that I am not prey and I am not a threat. "And you were comfortable with worst case being your death?" I asked. "I was already standing next to a pool that I knew contained a phase-shifting predator," Lila said. "If it wanted to eat me, talking was not going to make things worse, but acknowledging that I saw it, that I recognized it as intelligent, that might make it pause. Predators do not like being predictable. If I showed I could detect it, that changed the dynamic." The more she talked, the more I realized that this human had not just been lucky, She had been strategizing the entire time. Every decision, every movement, every word had been calculated based on her understanding of predator behavior. She had turned a deadly situation into a problem she could solve. "All right," I said. "Let us say you agree to help with this study. What would you want in return?" Lila smiled. "Besides the compensation, I want access to your behavioral databases. All the research you have on these predators, hunting patterns, social structures, communication methods. If I am going to keep traveling through this sector for my transport contracts, I would like to know what I might run into. Knowledge is survival, you know?" Smart. Very smart. She was not just looking for payment. She was looking for information that would keep her alive in future situations. "I can arrange that," I said. "When can you start?" "Tomorrow work for you? I need to check in with my cargo company, let them know I will be delayed again, and maybe get some actual sleep. That hike through your preserve was more tiring than I expected." We shook hands, which is apparently a human gesture of agreement, though it always felt slightly odd to me. Her grip was firm, confident, the grip of someone who had handled dangerous situations and come out fine. The next morning, I met Lila at the research wing of the facility. The team had set up an observation area in Sector 4, which housed less immediately lethal predators but still required serious caution. Today's subject was a pack of Shrike hounds. These creatures hunted in coordinated groups, used ultrasonic calls to disorient prey, and had been known to take down animals 3 times their size through pack tactics. The research coordinator, a nervous Yalthine named Pim, who had at least 9 specialized degrees in behavioral science, was practically vibrating with anxiety as he explained the setup. "The hounds are behind a reinforced barrier," Prom said, pointing to the transparent wall that separated the observation area from the enclosure. "We will lower it once you are in position. You will have an emergency recall device that will trigger sonic deterrence and raise the barrier again if needed. The entire research team will be monitoring from the control room. At any sign of aggressive behavior, we extract you immediately." "Got it," Lila said, checking the device he had handed her. "How many hounds are we talking about?" 6 adults. Standard pack size. They have been fed recently, so they should not be in active hunting mode, but their territorial instincts are still engaged. We want to see how they react to a non-prey organism in their space." Lila nodded and stepped into the preparation area. She stripped off her jacket, leaving just a simple shirt and pants. "Body language is easier to read when you are not hidden under layers," she explained when Pam looked concerned. "They need to see that I am not trying to hide or appear larger, just a normal, non-threatening presence." The barrier lowered with a hydraulic hiss. The Shrike hounds, which had been lounging in various spots around the enclosure, immediately perked up. 6 sets of eyes locked onto Lila. Their ears, which were oversized and extremely mobile, swiveled forward. One of them, the pack leader based on size and position, stood up and took several steps toward her. Lila did not move. She stood there, weight evenly distributed, arms relaxed at her sides, breathing steady. The pack leader approached slowly, circling around to get a better angle. The other hounds began to move as well, forming a loose semicircle. Classic pack hunting formation. "This is not good," Pim whispered, though we were safely behind several layers of reinforced observation glass. "They are coordinating. That is pre-attack behavior. But I noticed something." Lila's eyes. She was not looking directly at any of the hounds. She was using peripheral vision, watching all of them at once without making direct eye contact. Direct eye contact could be read as a challenge. She was avoiding that trigger. The pack leader got within 2 meters. It lowered its head slightly, sniffing the air. Then it did something unexpected. It sat down. Just sat down. Right there, staring at Lila, with what I could only describe as confusion. Lila slowly, carefully, lowered herself into a sitting position as well, matching the posture, showing non-aggression through body language. The other hounds, seeing their leader sit, began to relax. One by one, they stopped the circling behavior and settled into resting positions. They were still watching Lila, but the hunting tension had dissipated. "Remarkable," Pim breathed. She mirrored the pack leader's body language. She integrated into their social dynamics without challenging the hierarchy. Lila sat there for nearly 10 minutes. The hounds occasionally glanced at her, but mostly they went about their normal business. One of them even yawned and lay down for a nap. After a while, Lila slowly stood up, moved backward toward the barrier entry point, and signaled that she was ready to exit. The barrier raised. Lila stepped through. The hounds watched her go with what I swear was disappointed curiosity. like she had been a mildly interesting visitor who had not stayed long enough. "How did you know to sit down?" Tim asked immediately, his recorder device already capturing notes. That was not in any of the briefing materials we provided. The pack leader was confused, Lila explained. "I was not acting like prey, so it did not know what to do with me. By sitting down, I signaled that I was not a threat, and I was willing to follow its lead. In pack dynamics, deference to the leader is key. Once I showed I respected its position, the rest of the pack took their cues from how it reacted to me. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Lila interact with 17 different predator species. She approached each one with the same careful observation, the same understanding of behavioral cues, the same patience. Some interactions lasted only minutes. Others went on for over an hour. But every single time she walked away unharmed. The research team was documenting everything. Pim had already drafted 3 papers on predator cognition, based on Lila's sessions. The Xenobiological Council was calling it groundbreaking. And I was just trying to figure out how one human had managed to rewrite decades of established understanding about apex predators. On the final day of the study, I found Lila in the observation lounge, reviewing footage of her sessions. She looked tired but satisfied. "So," I said, sitting down next to her, "what have you learned?" "A lot," she admitted. "Your predators are way more intelligent than most people give them credit for. They are problem solvers. They recognize patterns. They adapt. And most importantly, they respond to respect. If you treat them like mindless killing machines, you are going to have a bad time. But if you acknowledge their intelligence and their space, they will usually do the same for you. That is going to change how we handle containment protocols." I said, "Maybe even how we approach conservation efforts. You have given us a completely different perspective." Lila smiled. "Happy to help, though I have to admit this was way more interesting than delivering cargo shipments. Maybe I should consider a career change." "You would make a terrible security analyst," I said. "You have too much common sense for this job." She laughed at that, and I found myself laughing too. It felt good. After 2 weeks of tension and scientific observation, it felt good to just laugh with someone who had turned a disaster into a discovery. Before she left, Lila turned to me and said something I will never forget. "You know what the real secret is, Venn? It is not about being fearless. I was terrified every single time I stepped into those enclosures. But fear is just information. It tells you to be careful, to pay attention, to respect what you are dealing with. The trick is not letting it control you. Use it to sharpen your focus, and then trust what you know." She left Velcaris the next day, back to her cargo routes and transport contracts. But the research team never stopped analyzing her methods. Within 6 months, new training protocols were implemented across the entire Galactic conservation network. Handler survival rates improved by 40%. Predator stress levels decreased significantly. And I got a commendation for, quote, "facilitating breakthrough research in interspecies behavioral dynamics," end quote. Not bad for a day that started with a human climbing a fence she should not have climbed. I still keep in touch with Lila. She sends messages occasionally, usually after some new adventure that would give most people cardiac episodes. Last month she told me she had accidentally wandered into a territorial dispute between 2 rival clans of thorned ravagers and had to mediate by sitting between them until they calmed down. That is just how she is. The human who stood still for 20 minutes and outsmarted every apex predator in the galaxy, not through strength or technology or weapons, but through patience, understanding, and respect. Turns out those are the most dangerous tools of all.